Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's De-JOE-tional. Before we get to this week's topic, I want to remind you that next week, May 4th, is the event everyone is talking about, the world premiere of Out of the Box with Joe Leonard. It's a weekly program. Did you just laugh again? It's a weekly program where I'm going to go outside the church and meet with somebody, a member of our church or somebody in the community. We're going to talk about faith and testimonials and maybe missions or different ministry projects or whatever going on in the community. And we'll just sit and chat, have a little talk, maybe play a little game. It'll be fun. It'll be entertaining. It'll be informative. Yeah, use one of those words. But it'll be a good time. That starts next Wednesday. All the videos are going to premiere at noon every Wednesday. And my first guest is someone you all know and love, Pastor Jay. Now, I'm not going to have him every week. I mean, we have to take Pastor Jay in doses, am I right? Just kidding, Pastor Jay. We'll see if you watch this. So, that starts next Wednesday. I will still be recording De-JOE-tional every Thursday. So you get to see me twice a week, 3 times if you count Sunday. So look forward to starting that next week. I'm very excited. But let's get to this week's chapter 12 of If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk. And this one is titled Inside Job. Have you all seen the movie When a Stranger Calls? It's a scary movie. I saw it years ago when it was first out. I've not seen it in a long time because I don't do scary movies. I don't do them. Anyway, in this movie, there's a babysitter who gets prank phone calls. And at first, I mean, they're no big deal. But then they become more frequent and they become more threatening. Now, I should tell you that this movie takes place before everybody has a cell phone in their pocket or before caller ID, and so it's been out for a while. So she ends up calling the police, calling 911 to see if they can trace the call. And as the calls become more frequent and more threatening, she becomes more scared. And so when she calls the cops, they decided to put a trace on this call or on the house to try to figure out where the call's coming from. As the next call comes in, they begin running the trace, and then they deliver the bone-chilling news that the call was coming from inside the house. Creepy. So, yeah, you got to watch the movie. So, no, I don't do it. Anyway, can this theme be true of religion in America? As we become a more divided and outwardly angry people, the greatest assault on the church, global church overall, appears to be an inside job. The calls are coming from inside our churches. We're hurting ourselves more than any outside force. You know, we like to blame diminishing participation on things like vacations and sports and theater and extracurricular activities and all this kind of stuff. And while those are legitimate factors, some of the blame lies on ourselves. It's really, really hard for us to look in the mirror. It's easy to say, oh, well, these other activities are going on, so families aren't coming. Part of the reason they're not coming, and part of the reason why we don't attend as often as we do, is because of us. Not the whole reason, part of it though. Are we being judgmental? Are we being hypocritical? Are we being lazy? Are we being opinionated or closed-minded? Is the call or the threat to our church coming from inside our own house? Have you seen the meme, I can't adult today? We get so overwhelmed by the everyday responsibilities and chaos associated with being an adult that we just want to get into our onesies, jammies, grab a box of Fruit Loops, and watch some cartoons. I run into this occasionally when out in public. Drivers, shoppers, other customers, customer service people, all make me holler out, "It's too people-y out here." I do it all the time. Susan and I will go for a drive and just, we'll make a stop, make a couple errands, and all of a sudden I'm like, nope, got to go home. It's just too people-y out here. I can't adult anymore today. Have you ever experienced that or had a similar feeling with church or with Christians? Have you seen some deplorable behavior on the news or on social media where the culprit declares that the behavior they've done is in the name of God or in the name of Jesus or according to the Bible? Have you left any kind of gathering of Christians saying to yourself, I just can't Christian anymore today? Many of us view church as a home and its members as our family. But what happens when you start to question those feelings? What happens when there starts to be doubt about your place there? Many of us go through a discernment process where we try to identify missed opportunities or ways that we can make improvements. Many of us do that out of obligation to our family because, or especially if we've been part of that family for a long time. New people, visitors, outsiders, young people don't do that. They don't have that connection. They don't have that obligation. We all live in a disposable society. They were raised in a disposable society where connection and commitment aren't what they used to be. It reminds me of the old joke when the guy goes to the doctor and says, "Hey doc, it hurts when I move my arm like this." And the doctor says, "Well, it's easy to fix. Stop moving your arm like that." When things start to hurt, we just stop and throw it away and move on. We do it with our jobs. We do it with our families. Some people do it with their marriages, with their friends, with organizations, and churches. How many of you, when you think of your parents and the jobs that they had, could list them on one hand? When my parents and their parents went to work as an accountant, or my grandpa he worked for the post office. That's what he did his entire life. I have to sit and actually think of the number of jobs I had. It takes me a while to figure all that out. We live in a disposable society. When it starts to hurt, we move on. W.C. Fields said it best. If at first you don't succeed, try again, then quit. There's no sense in being a damn fool about it. We don't like to be hurt. We make fun of the generation coming up that everybody gets a trophy. Well, they're here, right? They don't want to be hurt. So instead of working through issues, we move on. We do it too. It's tough being a Christian today. We're being attacked by outside sources challenging our beliefs. We have to scramble to find other times and ways to meet people because Sundays are no longer reserved. But worst of all, we have to deal with each other who claim we're doing God's work on one hand while stabbing each other in the back with the other. Sometimes I'm not sure why anyone would choose Christianity or choose to be a Christian if they weren't already. When was the last time we had a person join our church or attend worship who wasn't coming from another Christian denomination or another church? I get them all the time in GPS and Ignite. They all come with their friends. I say all the time, we have Catholics, Baptists, Free Methodists, non-denominational, but we also have people who Ignite and GPS are their church. So I see them all the time. And then they leave and start their faith journey somewhere else, usually. But if you weren't already a Christian, Based on what you see and read and hear about in our world today, would you become one? I'm going to read John's perspective here, page 137 of chapter 12. I am able to see the frauds and the false prophets because I've experienced the real and the beautiful of this faith, but not everyone has. And so I don't blame them for rejecting it all. It is often completely rejectable. Jesus spent a good deal of his life acknowledging this same injurious religious movement, and so their objections make sense to me. If all I had to go on was this malicious, power-hungry, bullying, bitter thing I see running amok every day in America, I'd run from it too. If following Jesus meant signing up for all this, I'd have no interest either. Sadly, the American church has in many ways become the greatest argument for someone not becoming a Christian, for rejecting organized religion and never looking back. He continues in the next paragraph. If that was all there was to this faith, I'd opt out of it too. But here's the catch. But I know better. I know that there are other expressions of Christianity here. Though they may not have the megaphones and mega churches and social media bandwidth, there are inclusive, redemptive communities filled with people of empathy and generosity and mercy. Human beings who are earnestly striving to emulate Jesus and who are rightly embarrassed by the hatred perpetuated in his name, who believe in loving their neighbor as themselves and welcoming the outsider and the outcast, who believe the table is open to anyone who comes hungry, and who believe compassion is our highest aspiration. The first official teaching job I got was in the St. Louis Public School District. I had worked as a co-teacher and an aide in Alton for 2 years before going over to St. Louis. And it was a nightmare. I only stayed for 3 months. In those 3 months, I had daily conversations with 2 young student teachers. This was their first experience in a classroom, and they were really struggling. And every day I would tell them, just stick it out. This is not real teaching. Based on what I had experienced in Alton and in other student teaching schools in other districts, this experience in St. Louis was not real teaching. And I kept reassuring them to stick through it. This is not real teaching. And after 3 months, I finally listened to myself and I left. I could have stuck it out. My grandparents probably would have stuck it out. But that's not the world we live in. It hurt my arm, and the doctor told me to stop moving it. So I left. Now I want to be perfectly clear here as I wrap up. I don't think Godfrey First is a toxic environment or that we have any of this going on. But it's definitely going on in other churches and in other denominations. Within our conference, within our denomination. So I'm just expressing this thought as a caution of what could happen if we aren't careful with our words and actions. Don't be the person that's making the call from inside the house. That's all I got for today. Happy De-JOE-tional, everyone. We'll see you next week.